Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind of reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is Lionel Ketchian, and I'm here with George Ortega, and we're here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and as far as we're concerned, always will be the point of it all. Today we'll be talking about happiness and being cool under pressure. Remaining cool is probably what we're talking about. I mean, it is so easy to be cool and happy and, at ease when things are going well. I mean, I had lunch, I'm relaxed, it's nice and comfortable in here. Not that hard to be happy in a situation like this, but is that what we're talking about, George, being cool under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, because again, 90% of us here in the United States are happy. Happiness is not that difficult, and you work on it a bit, it's very easy to be very happy, right? But then circumstances come up, deadlines, performances, social competition, social comparisons, conflict and all, and these are like pressure situations that test our happiness, and that's what we want to explore today, just being happy and cool under pressure.
Okay, so you're saying that it all starts when we're hit with the pressure situation, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like for example, we're being happy, we're being very happy, then like we've got a deadline to meet, we've got some work for our employer or for school or something, it has to be met, and for some reason we're up against time, we're up against some kinds of barriers, some pressures, and for many of us that's going to serve to distract us from our happiness. I mean, we're going to become so focused on getting this thing done, meeting the deadline, accomplishing the work, that it's very easy to just be distracted from and forget our happiness. So it's very important for us to just, this show is about like not letting those kinds of pressures impinge upon and limit our happiness.
Well, I think one of the things to define here is pressure, for example. Most people might think pressure would be a certain, like you mentioned, the boss giving us a deadline or that kind of thing. But pressure, if it was universally true that a deadline is pressure for everyone, then it would, that would be true. But it's really not. I know in my own case, as I was thinking about what you were saying, I write a column, Be Happy Zone. What else would I write about, right? And I actually have to sit down tonight, write it, and I haven't thought about it, haven't gotten to it, and it's due first thing in the morning. It's not pressure for me because I love doing it that way, and I'm at my best at that point, and I focus and I get it. Actually, it helps me focus because I know this is what I need to do, not must do or have to do, but love to do. And this is the time for it, and this is when I do it. So what I'm really saying is that pressure is perceived. I mean, all of us take it in different ways. Some of us will have something happen in life, and we will tell ourselves that this is bad. And that little conversation is where the unhappiness stems from, where the real pressure comes up, and it isn't really out there. It's really what we're internalizing.
Yeah, and you're bringing up the example of your case where deadlines like that just do not in any way impinge upon your happiness is very important, because the idea is if you can see that kind of situation in a way that maintains your happiness, then theoretically others can also. For example, like with performance, it's very interesting that for most people, getting up and talking, I think for me too, probably, I don't know. Oh yeah, definitely. Getting up and talking in front of people is scarier than death. People are more afraid of that than dying and all. And but for some people, for entertainers, I mean, who knows? Maybe they might be a little afraid, but they enjoy it. I mean, they thrive on it. So it's the idea, as you were saying, it's all about perspective, is how we're viewing this situation. And again, you're succeeding with meeting deadlines, entertainers, performers, speakers succeeding and thriving on giving speeches. That demonstrates to us all that these kinds of pressures that sometimes we feel are inevitable limitations on our happiness, we can really overcome.
So pressure might be an internal symptom or reaction, really, and not any kind of pressure at all. I mean, there could be the pressure of, let's say, it becoming just too hot. But you could do something about that kind of pressure. You could leave the room, you could adjust the temperature, take off your clothing, put on clothing. It's when you don't do anything about pressure that it becomes a problem, or it's your reaction to it that it becomes a problem. And I know that, I think you can boil down life and pressure to, it's not what happens, but how you respond to what happens. So the initial, what's happening, is just what's happening. I mean, it doesn't have to be good or bad. It's what we tell ourselves that's happening, to us, that makes it good or bad. And if we tell ourselves this is bad for us, that's where the pressure starts. That's where unhappiness begins.
Oh yeah, and then we can tell ourselves that that things are good. We can see the good in things. I mean, seeing that everything happens for the best, seeing the good in others rather than the fault, seeing the good in ourselves. But also what this show is perhaps more essentially about is that we can use happiness as the answer to pressure, as the perspective. In other words, we're not just going to succumb to the pressure of social competition or public speaking or any of that because we're so keenly focused on happiness. Because we're saying to ourselves while we're engaged in whatever, that wait a minute, whatever is going on is just not as important as the happiness, or if it is important, whatever is going on is going to go much better if we're able to maintain our happiness.
Well, and I think that my illustration about pressure being just something going on out there, and until you internalize it, that being said, everyone doesn't take it the same way. So when you bring up happiness, that's a perfect example and a fit for happiness being an answer, because if everyone doesn't take pressure the same way, then that means that we can counteract that pressure with happiness. And that's exactly my point. My point is that when you're happy, first of all, you're able to withstand pressure so much more. You're not only that, but you're able to see the good in many things that you would normally, just focus on the bad. And thanks to, happiness as an answer. So yeah, happiness is a real answer to dealing with pressure, because I think the other thing with pressure is that you're being controlled by something you don't like. And if you're being controlled, then the best thing to do is to take control. Generally, you can't always control the thing you don't like. It might be a person, that's not where you're paralyzed and controlling the outside situation or the person or the place or the thing. But you can certainly take control of your emotions and your response, and that's where happiness is an answer, because it is control.
Right, because they've done experiments on this. They've basically demonstrated that when people are happier, when people are feeling pleasant emotions, their memories are more pleasant, their perceptions are more pleasant, the way they go about doing things are more pleasant. And it's not just that. It's that as we become happier, as we're feeling happier, we'll tend to do whatever we're doing better. Our task performance improves. So happiness is really the answer to this pressure in a way that's very fundamental. Because again, happiness. If we keep happiness as our focus, then we'll recognize that that the performance, the interaction with others is kind of like, it might be important, but happiness is at least as important, perhaps generally more so.
Well, it's interesting you brought up work. You said performance at work by people who are happier, the performance level is better. And then the other interesting thing, because we talked about enjoyment, and pleasure, and if you're happy while you're working, maybe thinking happy thoughts, experiencing happy feelings, then the work will be better and you'll enjoy it, and in turn that'll lead to even better work because you'll tend to do you'll do things more effectively, more efficiently, and much better than someone who's unhappy, because if you're at odds with what you're doing, it's a struggle and you're not even enjoying what you're doing. If you're enjoying what you're doing, you have the capacity to perfect your work.
Oh yeah, sure. I want to explore one source of pressure for many of us, and this is important. I'm not sure when we're going to present this, but we're taping this mid-December. We're approaching on the holidays, and for many of us, social situations, family situations, parties, situations with coworkers tend to induce pressure. They tend to be felt as pressure by us. And basically, we want to present the idea that in those situations, it's so important to use happiness as the antidote to those things, because generally, when you think about it, the pressure of those situations has to do with our fear that they will limit our pleasure in the moment and our happiness in general. That they're like threats to our happiness, right? That let's say we don't measure up to someone in terms of our work versus theirs, our lifestyle versus theirs, and all right. We compare ourselves. We have this kind of like social competition. So if we're focused on happiness, and if we understand that happiness really is all there is, there's nothing else. I mean, everything else is a means. Then all those kinds of ways that generally invoke and induce fear in us, that come from others, are suddenly disarmed. It doesn't matter whether a person has more of whatever than we do if we are very happy, because that's all there is. The happiness is all there is. So what does that do? That disarms the situation. There's no longer pressure. We can appreciate the what others have. We don't have to compete with them, with anything. Because even I mean, theoretically, there's the idea of competing with happiness. But anyone who's happy wouldn't want to do that, because it's the idea. Yeah, if you're really happy, you want the other person to be as happy as possible, to be able to share the experience, because by sharing that experience, that's going to increase your happiness more.
True, very true, and that's the reason I think happy people work hard at helping others, or at least not standing in the way. If anything, if they could pay them to be happy, they would. I think that's about where there's nothing we could say more than that. But you make a very good point. If you're happy, and I think the happiness is really because the happier you are, you diminish your need and your want and your craving for things. Because let's face it, the heart of the matter is that your craving for things, your need and want of things, is so you could derive happiness from it. So I want this so I could get the feeling of being happy now that I have it. The problem with that is that we've all gotten things that we've wanted in life, but it hasn't been a lasting experience. So if we can be happy, we actually realize what our real needs are and differentiate that more from our wants, and stop dedicating our life to satisfying our wants and becoming a slave to them. That's what we're really talking about.
Oh yeah. And this show is also, it's not just about happiness, but it's about staying cool, being calm. Because it is, of course, about happiness, because the calmer we are, the cooler we are, the happier we're going to be. So in terms of being calm, staying calm under pressure, that's really, in a certain sense, about respect, about self-respect. It's about it's about recognizing our worth, recognizing that to the extent that we're afraid of the opinions of others, of the ramifications of not meeting a deadline, or of not performing as well as we can, if we're afraid of that, that means we're kind of not respecting ourselves as we should. It means that we're putting, we're basically holding the opinions of others, sometimes perhaps the needs or the judgments of others above our own, and that limits our how we respect ourselves. So as we stay calm, it's like we're doing this because we respect our judgment. We respect the fact that happiness is important and we're important. And so that, that calmness really is a reflection of our self-esteem, our just recognizing our worth, not over, the worth of that around us, the people around us and the situations, but on a par, definitely.
Now, I find those words, you may not think this, but I think those are probably the most profound words I've ever heard you speak. And I mean that because I'm just learning how important that kind of self-respect is. And sometimes to give that power away to others, and when we do that, we find out that they'll never give us what we can give ourselves. We're looking in the wrong place for that kind of acknowledgement. And it isn't that the world is a bad place, and it isn't that people are bad, but it is that, for example, no amount of fame, people who have become famous, no amount of fame is enough for anybody who's famous. I've had Desi Arnaz Jr., Lucille Ball's son, on my radio show many times, starting back in 1986. I think Desi Arnaz Jr. is a brilliant young man. He's a spiritual seeker. He seeks to improve himself. And I heard him utter the words that no amount of fame can ever make you happy. He knows this. He's seen it firsthand. No amount of money can ever make you happy. And when I hear a man who understands this, because his parents were very famous, very wealthy, and what he's saying is that no matter how much acknowledgement you have from the outside world, you crave more. In fact, the strange thing is the more you get, the more you think you need. And that's why your words, George, are very important, because it's the self-esteem of happiness that completely disrupts the ineffective way we go about trying to find this in the outside world. And you pretty much, I think, hit the spiritual nail on the head with that message you just gave us.
Thanks. Okay, but now, like, we're talking about kind of like overcoming pressure, using happiness to just disarm it, to diminish it, and to maintain really what we're here about. But we have to acknowledge, we're far from perfect. This may not work totally successfully in every situation. For example, we might find ourselves at a job or in a school situation where, like, the demands are so much, so many deadlines, so many performance demands that we're not, it's just it's too distracting to our happiness. We don't have the strength of focus to really maintain our happiness. Now, this is very important because a lot of us are in this kind of situation. We've created a lifestyle that we've been seeking money, as you're saying. We've been seeking fame, we've been seeking prestige and all, and this has like gotten us into jobs, into kind of like vocations and situations where a lot of times, in the sense of our happiness, we're way over our heads. We've gotten ourselves into a situation that requires demands from us only what we can fulfill, feeling pressured. All right, now, in those situations, we've got to step back. We've got to analyze the situation. We've got to ask ourselves, if we're parents, if we have children, if we have a family, we've got to ask ourselves, what is it more important, that I earn twice as much or that I and my family is twice as happy? We've got to set our priorities. So in these kinds of pressure situations where, the demands of overcoming the pressure are too great, then there is that answer to move into a less pressured, more pleasant, happiness-inducing situation.
Yes, and I see now that this whole thing about pressure is, and perfection, you brought up perfection, it's really not about being perfect, it's about doing the best we can do. And what I think that means for us is that we try to improve ourselves. If we start using happiness, it will help us improve. It's so much easier to improve ourselves with happiness because then we have the focus and the experience. And it's not about being perfect. I want to make that very clear. it's not like you say to yourself, I failed, I didn't meet my expectations. It's not about meeting your expectations. It's about accepting yourself, and that's how you eventually surpass your expectations. And even if you don't, it's about just being a little bit better, just realizing where you start to recognize what it is you can even do better. You know, it's the people who could care less what they do, and they go out and they impose their will and control, and you know, that's the other extreme. I think when we start to realize that happiness is what we're looking for, and pressure and how we deal with it is the most important thing we can look at, then we start to understand that we just have to improve ourselves a little bit, not be perfect.
Yeah. And all right, so we've been talking basically about like moving away from pressure when when it becomes too great. But there's also another answer, and that's something that you understand and many performers understand. It's that we can learn to enjoy the pressure. Just like, you know, a person will enjoy the fear of a roller coaster ride, the fear of parachuting, you know, living life on the edge, rock climbing, mountain climbing. So I mean, like, if we're in a situation that, let's say, we have to be in, let's say we can't avoid it, you know, it's a part of our job that, let's say, doesn't come too often, so that we should keep our jobs, but this part of our job, it feels, you know, pressured a lot. We did a show on happiness and disagreements. Just like in order to disarm disagreements, humor is a very effective tool. Humor is great for disarming pressure, because, like, you know, I mean, like, let's say somebody's giving a speech of some kind of performance, and they get something wrong. You know, they say something wrong, something they flub a line or something. I mean, that's funny. That's a source of humor. So much of our humor is about our attempting to do things in a certain way, and they just don't work out. And it is very humorous. So in terms of, like, dealing with pressures that we find ourselves in, if we find the humor in them, finding the humor in our becoming so intimidated by this, you know, oh my God, you know, I'm giving a speech and I didn't, you know, communicate it. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Finding the humor just totally disarms the pressure.
Absolutely. And George, you know, the world is becoming more aware of this, and I'll tell you how I know that. Last week I was asked to give a talk at a hospital to caregivers, you know, doctors, nursing staff, professionals, social workers, and so on. And I gave a short talk. That's an hour for me. That's the short version. And at the end of the talk, I had a wonderful opportunity to meet a few of the staff. And one wonderful doctor came up to me. He's a psychiatrist. And, we were talking a bit. And he asked me a question. He said, "Have you heard anything of laughter clubs?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he told me that he was teaching people to laugh about things. And the one point we understood is that when you laugh for no reason, you have total control. You have inner control. And he said it feels so good, and we laughed about it together. But laughter, making light of something, joking about something, it's an excellent way to take control, not only of yourself, but actually ultimately of the situation. Because there are some things that you can't control, and it's amazing that when we take back control and control ourselves through laughter, we lighten up everything. We throw light on it.
That is such a great point. Because, yeah, a lot of times, like, we may not see the humor in a situation. It may be difficult, right? But, yeah, I mean, like, with laughter, it's biological, it's physiological. We start laughing, and, like, you know, we've done a show on this, and
yes.
According to the research, I mean, a person who laughs is deriving the emotional and physiological benefits of the laughing, even if they're just, like, making themselves, even if they're acting, you know?
Right.
A laugh is a laugh. So that's a perfect antidote to pressure.
Yes, it is. And, you know, the more we say, even if you're acting, you know something, we're all acting unhappy, we're all acting happy. If you act as if, it's just as effective, because it's a behavioral change. You've changed your behavior. You're overriding your emotions, you're overriding your feelings, you're telling yourself what to think. Don't put down acting as if, and don't put down laughter, because it starts telling your brain what to do. It starts letting you experience your feelings. I mean, it's the greatest thing we've got. I mean, if you think a smile is powerful, try laughter. And if you've really got a healthy laugh, people will laugh right along with you. It's contagious. So with that, we hope this contagious continues, and we thank you very much for tuning in today. Thanks for watching. In the future, we're going to explore other topics that are designed to help us better enjoy life. Be good, think well, feel very happy, and I hope you'll join us again next week on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful, it's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.